Welcome to today's consciousness talk, and before I start, you know what to do, to hit the bell notification so that you're notified on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays about different teachings that I shall be doing. Mondays is usually a meditation, Wednesdays is a Wisdom Wednesday talk, and Fridays is really about the freedom of being, more to do with consciousness. And so today I was just thinking about, the mirrored reality, what we're looking at ourselves when we're looking at ourselves in the mirror, because we really live in a world of contrasts, in a world of polarities, of duality, and sometimes we wonder, whilst we're looking at something in our perception, for example, a tree or a flower or a forest, whether the humanity is really proceeding in the proper direction of what we're actually viewing. And so when I infer to this, I actually mean that one of the first realizations of anything is when we see the reflection of something in a mirror. And is it the reflection that's really you, or is it the image that's really you? Now, we all know the answer of that. If you've been following my teachers, it's the image. Change the image to change the reflection. You cannot make a reflection smile, but you can certainly change the emotions within the image so that the reflection that's being reflected back to you smiles. And this is the whole concept around smoke and mirrors. And when you look at yourself being reflected in the mirror, that reflection smiles because the image smiles. That reflection laughs because the image laughs. That reflection cries because the image cries. And after a little while you realize, my state of being, my internal emotions, who I am being right now, my image is actually creating the reflection that's reflecting back to me. So then how much of what I'm seeing in this universe is really what is being, or what is happening through my own lens of perception internally? And this takes us back to the who am I? Who's the real me? Whether it's located in the front of the mirror or behind the mirror. Now, you know from my Tufty videos when I spoke about the metaphysical mirror, that beyond the metaphysical mirror, in the space of variance, which in Vedic terms is known as the Brahmanda, everything is possible. The whole of creation exists. And to look at it all like film scripts, and whatever you're giving your attention to manifests. But everything, everybody, every possible scenario already exists. And then the train of thought that follows on from this is when you even start talking to yourself. For example, if you put on a crown, the image that's reflected back to you is a sovereign being wearing a crown. If you look demonic or dress up demonically, the image reflected is that of a demon. If you imagine yourself within you as source creation of pureness, of light, as a god, then the image that you would see reflected back is only that of source creation. And one step further, if I was the world myself and I stood in front of the mirror, then I would see the world as my own reflection. If any of you have seen the Matrix film, it says in the film, there is no other apart from you being reflected as you at your different levels of frequency. And this takes you on, if you are the world and you are the entire universe, then what you are actually seeing, perceiving, reflecting is all happening within the self. The entire suns, the galaxies, the stars, the trees, the waters, the lakes, the sky, everything. It's all within you. And this is interesting because if you do show two people the same thing, they will both perceive it in a different way. And so this takes us on to a deeper understanding that my mind is actually a mirror. And that mirror can be so pure that all I'm reflecting was me to myself. And I am the entire cosmos. I am the entire universe. I see myself as I see my reality. And what do I intend to create? And so in that moment of realization, there's an equation between me and the world that I am seeing from my lens of perception. The world is simply mirroring me. And if there are parts of me that I don't like, then those parts of me in the world will also be reflected that I don't like. And if I want to see the world in a better way, then I must start improving the insides of me, so that those parts of the world that are reflected back to me are reflected in a better way. Simply said, it is not the circumstances that create your reality, it is your state of internal being, your frequency, your vibration, that then is reflected within the world mirror. And this really brings us back into taking accountability of self. The realization that any process of change can only begin with the self, myself. The whole process of change begins with self. You are the center, the 0 point, the bindu point, the creational point of the entire world that you exist in. All is well in my world. My world is looking after me. I am looking after my world because you are the world. Do not allow fear to grab you thinking that you're all alone in this world. Is there nothing else beside this world other than me? This can lead to an absolute loneliness, that there is nothing else beside you in this world, and that it's really just a mirror of yourself. It is born inside you. It is growing inside you. So it's all is self. You are always meeting yourself. All the multiplicity, all the differences that you see are simply like a dream which have arisen in your mind's eye, and then they are going to also vanish like a dream in your mind's eye, because you yourself contain the entire universe. All is self, experiencing self ad infinitum. If you want to prove that A contains B, what would you do? Would you deny A and see if B can also exist? And so if I want to prove that I contain the entire universe, what do? I deny myself and see if the universe actually exists. And the existence of the universe is conditional to my existence. The first reality is reality of my thoughts. What am I thinking right now? What am I actually creating through my whole thought process? Because the world out there is only created reality from my thoughts. And then I ask myself, am I my thoughts? And if these thoughts are imaginary, then the world, which is derived from this set of thoughts, cannot be a higher reality than the thoughts themselves. And so this entire process starts to bring about a certain change in the dream that I am actually seeing or perceiving. And I must start to dream a better dream. I must start dreaming my ideal dream. And this is when belief systems come into play. I must make a belief to myself that I am the creator of my reality. And this comes from my own self, and that this reality becomes the model for what is happening and what I am actually experiencing. You and I and every one of us can have our dreams and make our dreams come true. But we must understand that every one of our dreams is going to manifest sooner or later. Must have a belief of this. How soon they're going to manifest and when, we leave that to the universe in surrender. And that also depends on the clear-cut clarity of your thoughts, the purity of your thoughts, the clarity of how you're projecting these thoughts into your innerverse, your universe. And so the entire process of change has to begin from within. And this is when I talk about turning yourself inside out. And when we turn ourselves inside out, we start to have a better dream, because we come from within. We do not allow the circumstances to dictate what is going to happen in our dream. And what do I mean about having a better dream? Well, what do you prefer? Do you prefer love or fear? You always have a choice. There's no two opinions about it. What would you prefer in your dream? Because we're all made as particles of one source creation. And so it's important that we don't limit ourselves, our sensory perceptions, because we are limitless beings. We imagine ourselves to have certain identities, certain role models we play, because we're simply molded by society, family, into the roles, the masks, the names, the structures, all of that we soon become entrapped in these facades. But can you strip yourself of all of those facades and know and realize that you are much bigger than what you actually think you are? You are a soul being who has come on this plane to have a human experience. And the way you perceive the world is really conceived by your senses. Your sense of touch, smell, sight, hearing, taste. And if we look at our eyes, we see that something near to us appears larger and something further away in the distance, in the horizon, is smaller. Beyond that, the eyes, as we know them, cannot perceive ultraviolet light or infrared light or microwaves. But if we want to see, we have to develop separate instruments to be able to do that. Even with our sense of hearing, when we're indoors, we only hear what's inside our home. We hardly hear what's going on outside the home. Even with touching, we only feel from our body sense. But our skin cannot perceive something that's even a couple of millimeters away from us. There's a cut-off line. But we do feel. We feel temperatures. We feel feelings. So every one of our senses of sight, of smell, of hearing, every one of these things is acting like a localized magnifier. And suppose you start to wear some sort of a microscope on you that magnifies everything. You know, something attached to your eyes, your ears, your skin. Would be able to feel so much more, hear so much more, see so much more. And like I said, what is near us appears bigger, and what is far away from us appears smaller. So in such a sense, what kind of an emotional interaction with the world can you have when you think that something closer to you is more important than what is further away from you? And so the affections that you have, the attachments that you have, these are all brought about by the nature of your senses. Your attachments are the sources of your appreciation of the universe that you live in, of your division of the universe, of how you classify your cognitions. And all of these things are simply based on the fact that you're drawing you out of yourself. Because, as I said, it is all you experiencing yourself. And from that, your projection is also coming from the nature of your senses, of you projecting you. After all, when you squeeze a lemon, what do you get? You get lemon juice. So if I was to squeeze you, what was I to get? More of you. And then we come on to the thinking and the feeling mind. There are two ways of knowing things. When I say that I know that this is an object, then my mind is functioning. and it's comparing this object with so many different objects that it's actually ruled out other possibilities. For example, if I know my car is a car, it's a car. If the car was compared to a lorry, for example, it is an abstract thought that the limited mind of information cannot recognize. So when you say that you know something, this act of knowledge is really like a knife that's cutting away or separating an object from the rest of reality. It's divisible. And so the nature of knowing and the act of cognition is dividing the whole into separate parts. And so if you want to become an expert in knowing something, the finer your discrimination becomes, you start to cut the universe into smaller, finer, synthesized particles. Because the thinking mind discriminates. The knowledge is divisive. And discrimination is the faculty of the thinking mind. And so this means that given a starting point, which is you, yourself, who's the thinker, you're going to go into different branches of division. You're dividing yourself into your thinking mind and the knowing mind. Thinking mind coming from the head, the knowing mind almost coming from the heart. But when the heart and the mind are in alignment, you also become more in alignment with your 0 point. But if the heart and mind are separated, you start to go further out into the branches and the sub-branches and so on. Just like a tree. So in other words, you can say that the thinking mind of being is like a centrifugal force. Centrifugal meaning it's moving away from its center, from the 0 point. But the knowing mind is like a centripetal force. It keeps coming back to that center point, that 0 point of the dot and the circle. And so if you're standing on the top of a tree on the surface of a sphere and the whole sphere is rotating, only the center of that sphere is stable. The thinking mind behaves like the convex surface on what you're sitting. It's defocused. The reason why it's defocused is because it's always searching. It's going outward from the center point, just like a spiritual seeker. But the feeling, knowing, wisdom mind is the opposite of that. It's the centripetal force. It's the centering device whose foundation is based on love. And so what you're trying to do is to eliminate the distinctions that you are seeing actually without your eyes. You're hearing without your ears. You're thinking without your mind. Because the feeling is a centering device, is the way of the heart. The heart is the reception, the receptive thing that already knows. It's like being in love. You just know. And you be love, and you make love, and you embrace. You unite, you come together into the 0 point, the center point. It's two becoming one. Not the two separating. And as by a process of continuous successive reductions, you can then bring infinity from the external into oneness, into unity consciousness, just by unconditional love, the uniting principle. Not pushing away from yourself, but coming back to yourself, to knowing yourself. In the same way, it's important not to create the divisions between you and you, but to come back to being you. Which is the purpose of life. In the Tao, this is the merging of the yin and the yang, the positive and negative energies, the male and the female, the knowing and the thinking mind, the masculine and feminine, the feminine being the receptive one. This is the wholeness and the balance of energies. And when you balance this whole probing effect, this action based on love, the entire world becomes more meaningful because you're coming from the inside out 0 point. And when you start to see yourself reflected in the mirror, there's a certain part that you start to see in the mirror when the mirror actually starts to disappear. Because you've moved your attention away and your identifications of the masks that you're wearing with different parts of the cosmos. And you become one with the self. You become one with the heart and the mind being aligned. And you become a witness consciousness of unity. You actually start to identify yourself as the witness consciousness, in the knowing that you're not two different people, the image and the reflection, but that you are the parts of the dream of one single individual, adopting to the role models that you are playing out in the different games and scenarios and film scripts that you're experiencing. And this enables you to play the game of life more effectively as the detached observer, without having to die. This is also a way to overcome fear, because you become awake within the dream. And once you're awake and aware within the dream, there is simply no more separatedness. Everything is unified with you and yourself. And you know that it's all an illusion, and that you've just been playing in this game. And you learn to smile and laugh at the big cosmic joke. This world that we're living in is used to be played like a game. But the foundation must always come from love, as the foundational blanket knitting the cosmic web. And just take a deep breath. And just be the detached witness of what is happening in your life. You don't need to pass any judgment, whether it's good or bad or desirable or undesirable. You do not evaluate, you do not cognitize. You just say, how interesting. This too shall pass. Things come and go like waves in the sea or clouds in the sky. I am the detached observer. The experience of my reflection in the mirror is my image as source creation reflecting itself. And every action that I am performing, I visualize the image from a pure space. And so what is being reflected is the reality I create in my joy, as my heart and mind are in alignment. I am always supported by the universe. All is well in my world. My world is looking after me in all ways, always, till infinity. Thank you, thank you, thank you.